Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jarada Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare morning, devotees, Prabhus, and Prabhus. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. We're going to read 2 verses today as the purport, and the first verse is a little short. Verses 28 and 29, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Naruttamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nastapraya Savadrisu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavadutama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki. Verse 28. Anasyam api jayayam trayaputra asanutamas tamasu raivata iti mamvantara dipataya. Anasyam, other, api, also, jayayam, in the wife, traya, 3, putra, sons. A son, there were, Uttama Tamasa Raivata, Uttama Tamasa and Raivata, iti thus, Manu Antara, of the Mambantara millennium, Adipataya, rulers. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. In his other wife, Maharaj Priyavrata begot 3 sons, named Uttama, Tamasa, and Raivata. All of them later took charge of Mambantara millenniums. Purport. In every day of Brahma, there are 14 Manvantaras. The duration of one Manvantara, the lifespan of one Manu, is 71 yugas, and each yuga is 4,320,000 years. Almost all the Manus selected to rule the Manvantaras came from a family of Maharaj Priyavrata. 3 of them are particularly mentioned herein, namely Uttama, Tamasa, and Raivata. End of that purport. We'll go to the next verse. Evam upasyamaneshu tva swataneshu ata jagati patir jagatim arbudhani ekadasha parivat saranam avyahata kila purasha karasara sambritador danda jugala pidita maurvi guna stanita viramita dharma pratipaksho Barishmat Yas Chanudinam Idamana Pramoda Prasarana Jaushinya Vrida Pramushita Hasavaloka Ruchira Kshveli Adivi Parabhyumana Viveka Ivana Bhutyamana Iva Mahamana Bhubuje. Synonyms. Evam das upashama anyeshu, all well qualified. Svatanayeshu, his own sons, ata thereafter, jagati pati, the master of the universe, jagatim, the universe, arbudani, arbudas. 1 arbuda equals 100 million. Ekadasha, 11. Parivat saranam, of years, Avyahata, without being interrupted, Akila, universal, Purushakara, prowess, Sara, strength, Samrita, endowed with, Dodanda, of powerful arms, Yugala, by the pair, Apidita, being drawn, Marvigona, of the bowstring, Stanita, by the loud sound, Viramita, defeated, Dharma, religious principles, Pratipaksha, those who are against, Barhishmatya, of his wife Parhishmati. Cha, and Anudinam daily, Idhamana, increasing Pramoda, pleasing intercourse, Prasarana, amiability, Yosinia, feminine behavior, Vrida, by shyness, Pramushita, held back, Hasa, laughing, Avaloka, glancing, Ruchira, pleasing, Shreli, Adibi, by exchanges of loving propensities, Parabhuyamana, being defeated, Viveka, his true knowledge, Iva, like, Anabha Buddhyamana, a less intelligent person, Iva, like, Mahamana, the great soul, Pubuje, ruled. Excuse me. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. After Kavi, Mahavir, and Savana were completely trained in the Paramahamsa stage of life, Maharaj Priyavrata ruled the universe for 11 arbudas of years. Whenever he was determined to fix his arrow upon his bowstring with his two powerful arms, all opponents of the regulative principles of religious life would flee from his presence in fear of the unparalleled prowess he displayed in ruling the universe. He greatly loved his wife Parishmati, and with the increase of days, their exchange of nuptial love also increased. By her feminine behavior as she dressed herself, walked, got up, smiled, laughed, and glanced about, Queen Parishmati increased his energy. Thus, although he was a great soul, he appeared lost in the feminine conduct of his wife. He behaved with her just like an ordinary man, but actually he was a great soul. Purport. In this verse, the word dharma pratipaksha, opponents of religious principles, refers not to a particular faith, but to varnashram dharma, the division of society socially and spiritually into 4 varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and 4 ashrams, Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. To maintain proper social order and help the citizens gradually progress toward the goal of life, namely spiritual understanding, the principles of Varnashram Dharma must be accepted. From this verse, Maharaj Priyavrata appears to have been so strict in maintaining this institution of Varnashram Dharma that anyone neglecting it would immediately flee from his presence as soon as the king warned him by fighting or administering light punishment. Indeed, Maharaj Priyavrata would not have to fight, for simply because of his strong determination, they dare not disobey the rules and regulations of Varnashram Dharma. It is said that unless human society is regulated by Varnashram Dharma, it is no better than a bestial society of cats and dogs. Maharaj Priyavrata therefore strictly maintained Varnashram Dharma by his extraordinary unparalleled prowess. To maintain such a life of strict vigilance, one needs encouragement from his wife. In the Varnashram Dharma system, certain classes such as the Brahmins and Sannyasis do not need encouragement from the opposite sex. Kshatriyas and Grihastas, however, actually need the encouragement of their wives in order to execute their duties. Indeed, a Grihasta or Kshatriya cannot properly execute his responsibilities without the association of his wife. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally admitted that a Grihasta must live with a wife. Kshatriyas were even allowed to have many wives to encourage them in discharging the duties of government. The association of a good wife is necessary in a life of karma and political affairs. To execute his duties properly, therefore, Maharaj Priyavrata took advantage of his good wife, Parishmati, who was always very expert in pleasing her great husband by properly dressing herself, smiling, and exhibiting her feminine bodily features. Queen Parishmati always kept Maharaj Priyavrata very encouraged, and thus he executed his governmental duty very properly. In this verse, Eva has twice been used to indicate that Maharaj Priyavrata acted exactly like a hand-picked husband, and thereby seemed to have lost his sense of human responsibility. Actually, however, he was fully conscious of his position as a spirit soul, although he seemingly behaved like an acquiescent karmic husband. Maharaj Priyavrata thus ruled the universe for 11 arbudas of years. One arbuda consists of 100 million years. Under Maharaj Priyavrata ruled the universe for 11 such are Buddhas. Om Jnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurumilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Nangayate Grim Yad Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanyam Ishwaram. So here is the progeny of Maharaj Priyavrata as described. First, the verse describes his other wife, doesn't mention her by name, but the three sons, Uttama, Tamasa, and Raivata, they became Manvantara rulers. And the duration of one Manvantara, the lifespan of Manu, is 71 yugas. So if a yuga is 4,320,000 years, that means that the lifespan of Manvantara ruler is, according to my trusty calculator, 306,720,000 years. Now, that's a very long time, apparently, to us, because we get lucky if we live for 100 years. Mostly people don't live 100 years anymore. They live a lot less. Why? Because there are so many inconveniences in the world at the moment. Pollution and crime and anxiety. Ayurveda says that there are three causes of disease. One is stress, one is poor hygiene, and the other one is bad digestion. So if you have one of these three, poor hygiene, poor digestion, or stress, you're actually diminishing your lifespan. And it seems like to live for 306 million years, it's a long time. But we can see the equivalency as we are in different stratas of the universe. So a mosquito doesn't live very long. Maybe lives for a couple of days. But to the mosquitoes, that's 100 years. So we think, oh, a couple of days is not very much because we may live for 80 to 100 years. But to the mosquito, our 100 years go by in 48 hours. And in the same way, those who are living 306 million years, they think, oh, 100 years, that's peanuts. Lord Brahma lives for, if you talk about longevity, Lord Brahma takes the cake, lives for 311 trillion years. And there is people who want to, the audience of Brahma or the blessings of Brahma, they have to spend a lot of time just to get his attention because he has such a long lifespan. So you may spend 40,000 years waiting in the waiting room, reading old magazines until he sees you. Just like Hiranyakashipu, he practiced austerities for so long that it stood in the tip of his toes until his body was no longer tenable. It passed his lifespan almost, and the body was consumed, and an anthill was built around his body. And then Lord Brahma eventually noticed, after tens of thousands of years, But the life of anybody in the material world, whether it is a cell or a mosquito or a human being or Lord Brahma, is the same. The duration is a certain amount of time, and then one is gone. Although in Lord Brahma's planet, as Prabhupada described in a previous verse, is in this undescribable by words, and the opulence is as such, but the special opulence is that is almost like Vaikuntha Loka. There is no birth, there is no anxiety, there is no death, there is no disease, there is no deformity, there is no wars and pestilence and floods and fires and earthquakes, any of these things. Whereas where we live, this little planet of ours, which is actually not a very good neighborhood, is a gated community in the bad sense. That is gated. We can't get out of here. Like usually gated communities are built for people who that are affluent, and they don't want the riffraff to come and disrupt their life and bother them. So, but they can go anywhere they want. Whereas we live in this gated community called the Earth, where we are the ones who are imprisoned. We can't get out. And that's why the superintendent is called Durga. She is the boss of a gated community. Durga means can't move. You cannot move. You basically are circumscribed by disease and death. And that's it. And in Lord Brahma's planet, things are a little different. And again, Lord Brahma lives for 311 trillion years, which is inconceivable. We can't even conceive about that number, on a piece of paper. What to speak of someone living for that. We are surprised when they have a birthday party for an old lady in Cleveland that turned 102 years of age and can barely walk or remember anything. But Lord Brahma lives for 311 trillion years of a healthy life. Then the Manvantaras that rule the millenniums, and then eventually we get back to the main protagonist of this chapter of the Bhagavatam, which is Maharaj Priyavrata. Maharaj Priyavrata truly wanted to be a brahmachari, didn't want anything to do with ruling and so on. It's like approaching a young brahmachari in some temple and telling him, okay, from now on, you're going to be the governor of the state. What? Seriously? I don't want anything to do with that. I just want to distribute books and read the books and eat some prasadam and chant Hare Krishna. But Maharaj Priyavrata, well, he had some objections, but eventually Lord Brahma came, and because of following etiquette, which is a good thing, he actually conceded and eventually got married. He got married to this lady who was, her name was Barishmati. And he ruled for 11 arbudas of years. So you can multiply 100 million times 11. That is a long time to us. But to him, not so much. Apparently, we live in different universes, you can say, metaphorically. That for someone, 2 days is a lifetime, for someone 100 years is a lifetime, and for someone 11 times 100 million is a lifetime. So no big deal there. And he was very powerful. He was none of these politicians they don't have power. They are just attracted to power. They demand respect instead of commanding it. And they are attached to their position, not to the welfare of others. They are attached to the position, and some of them you have to just drag them out of office. And if nothing else, death will drag them out of office. So what are the benefits of this? This world is very topsy-turvy, very hard to understand. And if there is no God, then morality doesn't make any sense. It's the law of the jungle. That's why here it says that Maharaj Priyavrata, when he would just string his bow, that was sufficient to create fear. Well, fear in the heart of certain people who are not up and up. They're not straight. They're crooked. They have sinful desires and they want to implement them. So there's a deterrent. So this is what power acts as a deterrent. Because let's say if you're driving your car and you're not breaking any laws and you're not planning to break any laws, and you see a police car, you don't start shaking and trying to, basically you just go on with your life. But if you're actually hiding something, if you're transporting drugs, if you just rob a bank, if you're speeding, whatever, if you're breaking the law in any particular way, or you're thinking about breaking the law, then fear is imbued into your heart because you're doing something wrong. So Maharaj Priyavrata was a just ruler. However, for those who didn't want to follow the regulated principles of religious life, as Prabhupada calls it, he put fear into their hearts. And they had to follow the law because he will actually punish them. Prabhupada said light punishment or just by his mere presence. Then enter Parishmati, his lovely wife, who was an expert at being a woman. So by her feminine behavior, she dressed herself for her husband. Usually nowadays, women dress themselves for adulation, for admiration, because they want attention. But a good wife dresses herself for her husband, although women tend to dress themselves for other women because they care more about their opinion. Just like when a woman talks to a man or a wife talks to a husband, it's not asking for advice or opinion in general. It's just she wants to be heard. And in order to, if they want an opinion, they call their girlfriend, not a man. So Barishmati, being a culture person, she knew her power rested in her femininity. And by her feminine behavior, she attracted her husband by the way she walked, by the way she talked, by the way she laughed, smiled, glanced about. And actually, contrary really to what would happen in any ordinary man's life, that gave strength to the seemingly hand-picked husband But he was no such thing. He hasn't forgotten that he was a spiritual soul and he was a servant of Krishna. He ruled without ever forgetting these facts. As Prabhupada describes, he was fully conscious of his position as a spirit soul, fully conscious, not sometimes. And even though he behaved as a acquiescent, is the word used in the purport, husband, like a karmi husband, he wasn't such. He was actually pure soul. So we need a Priyavrata at this point on earth. And we say, well, but then people are going to oppose it. They want democracy. They want to vote. They want to have a say. But really, we can see where this policy has taken us, that we allow ignorant, sinful people to give their opinion, and they get someone similarly disqualified to take office. So I'm not really a great fan of democracy in the sense that everybody has a vote, because then you have to subject yourself to the decision of others who are less qualified, and they're easily swayed and convinced due to their accumulation of material desires and the decrease in intelligence. They will make a bad decision, and one will have to suffer the consequences of such a thing. So it is better that the intelligent people choose naturally endowed being that is not swayed by the senses, as we can see here in the previous verses, that the strength of a person is in to be able to control their senses, not to let them loose, like mistakenly what thought in the 70s, even espoused as a philosophy by some Indian pseudo-gurus, like we can name names. Rajneesh also changed his name into Osho. He said that the way to control the senses is to overload them by indulging, and then eventually they will leave you alone. Good luck with that. That won't work. It's like fire, that you may add some ghee to the fire, and because the ghee has certain density, the fire may go down for a little bit and then come back raging. So this is what unsatisfied lust is like, or greed, or the desire for power, or anger. If you feed it, it will grow. It may go down a little bit if you indulge yourself. If you're an angry person and you need anger management, and you're allowed to express your anger at every single turn of events, what are the chances that you will be peaceful eventually? Close to zero. Same with lust, same with greed, same with all these inebrieties. So the secret, open secret, is to control the senses. And by controlling the senses, one actually can enjoy some peace. And peace is the road to happiness. You cannot be happy without being peaceful first. So this is the life of Maharaj Priyavrata, who was a great soul, who was asked to do a job that probably would not have been appealing in his eyes or in anyone's eyes if they tell you have to rule the universe for a few hundreds of millions of years. You're not going to be so happy about it, because as one has to have a certain nature, like to rule over others. Even though we came to the material world to be controllers, when a true responsibility is placed upon our shoulders to control, but do it with licit, not illicit. Licit means, and with detachment and kindness, and not everybody's inclined to do that. It is actually a very highly priced skill. That's why we appreciate when managers actually they take the job seriously, but also they take the responsibility that comes with the job, which is to listen to others and try to understand everyone's nature and keep it under control in a good sense, to channel it properly. And we would be very blessed if we actually can do that with our own life. We can channel our energies and turn whatever is bothersome and bad into something that could be useful and productive. All right. Let's pause here and hear from Taraka Prabhu. You'll be the first.
Hey, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you for your class. It's always interesting to hear how you're going to address the text and purport. I never know exactly which way you're going to go with it. So
usually south.
Oh, stop. Anyway, I always enjoy what you do. I take notes during class. I'm going to refer to my notes here because my memory is abysmal. You were talking about Kali Yuga and the prevailing conditions which contribute to the finished duration of life. There are, of course, a lot of different factors. Srila Prabhupada used to claim that longevity is predetermined. It's a matter of from previous birth, but that the way that it works is that you get a fixed number of breaths. So every minute we inhale and exhale some particular number of times, and there's a fixed number of times that you get to inhale in the course of your life. And he explained that particularly for those whose senses are unrestricted, and especially those who indulge excessively in sex life, their duration of life is greatly diminished. Every time a man discharges semen, he is reducing his. He explained that in any act of sex, you breaths. There was one class that he gave, had all the devotees laughing hysterically because Srila Prabhupada actually imitated the sound of someone engaging in sex and breathing heavily. illustrate how that works, but the energy discharge in sex is actually the life force, the very energy that sustains life within the body is discharged in sex. So you are draining that energy and significantly diminish the duration of life. In Kali Yuga, we have a peculiar condition which does not exist in other ages, and which does not exist in civilized society. And in the dense ignorance of Kali Yuga, people are hedonistic. They are ruled by their senses, a desire to gratify their senses unrestrictedly, and they are born into a society, a culture which regards sex life as a means of recreation. The present age, people take that for granted, that sex is great fun, but in civilized cultures and in other ages, no one ever thinks like that. The understanding is that sex life is specifically for producing good children and not for any other purpose. Interactions between men and women, acts of sense gratification, but they don't. The activity does not extend below the waist. Even in Krishna Leela, sometimes people think that they imagine that Krishna is engaged in all kinds of sexual affairs with the gopis, and that's absolutely not true. From a material perspective, his relationship with the gopis started as illicit, but the actual activities, and that's a whole different subject matter that I'm not going to get into, but if you actually study the recorded descriptions of Krishna's activity, find that there in no instance was there any sexual intercourse that took place between Krishna and the gopis. First of all, he was only 8 to 10 years old. The gopis young. You don't find that there was any use of contraceptives. You don't find that the gopis were getting pregnant. And the reason is because they were not engaging in sexual intercourse. There was embracing and kissing, and you will find even descriptions of Krishna touching Srimati Radharani's breasts. Sometimes people make reference to Gita Govinda. They imagine that it's describing some kind of sexual encounter. If you look at a bona fide translation, you see that that's not the case at all. And you can also see that at no time were Krishna and Radharani even undressed, civilized in any way. I don't want to carry that line of thought any further, but sex life is a major contributor to the reduced duration of life in Kali Yuga. You also talked about.
Let me make a comment about that.
Sure.
Well, it is understood that the material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So what is valued most in the material world is sex, which is at the bottom of the tree of the spiritual world, which is no use whatsoever, no use whatsoever. And as far as Maharaj Priyavrata, he had a special, extraordinary dispensation to enjoy sensual activities with his wife. I guess, I don't know, that maybe that was a concession for having to rule for 11 times 100 million years that he had to spend doing government business, and without the consequences. Because people say, well, sex is natural. If God didn't want us to enjoy sex life, he wouldn't have put a layer of pleasure in the genitalia. But if sex is natural, so is pregnancy. And it is also natural for a child to be born and to have a loving father and mother. So if you're going to go the natural way, you should go all the way, which is obviously meant for procreation within a stable, loving environment, which is to protect the child. Go ahead, go to your other point.
Well, now I want to comment on your comment.
Okay.
So I would just say that the Priyavrata's sense gratification, we don't want to make the mistake of projecting our own conceptions of sense gratification onto Priyavrata. From what I have seen of Srila Prabhupada's comments, Priyavrata and other similar situations, he explains that it's not like Priyavrata was when we talk about when Srimad Bhagavatam is talking about the sense gratification of Priyavrata, we have to understand what that actually means. It's not as though he's certainly not having unrestricted sex. He obviously had a number of children. He had sex for the purpose of procreating, not for the purpose of sense gratification, but for a householder, the very activities of the household ashram are regarded as sense gratification. That's the sense gratification that's being referred to. The fact that that he adopts household life, all of the accoutrements of a home, the association of a wife, activities of maintaining wife and family and home, all of that is regarded as sense gratification, and that's the sense gratification that's being referred to. In the modern context, people have a very different conception of what constitutes enjoyment, and that's not what we're talking about. That's my understanding. Anyway, my next point. You were talking, Srila Prabhupada mentions in this purport that material enjoyment, how did he put it? I got to look at the verse. Encouragement from the wife. He talks about the necessity for encouragement from the wife. This principle Srila Prabhupada spoke about elsewhere, and it brought to my mind in particular an instance, this lecture in which Srila Prabhupada discussed a lot of interesting things, but it took place in Johannesburg in 1975, October of 1975. Krishna Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada were talking, Krishna Krishna said, you said in the Srimad Bhagavatam that if one wants to increase the material standard of living, then they increase also sex life. And this is what they are doing in India today. Srila Prabhupada, yes, without sex life, one cannot be materially enthusiastic. And if you stop sex life, then you become spiritually advanced. This is the secret. If you stop sex life, then you become spiritually advanced. And if you indulge in sex life, then you will be materially enthusiastic. That is the difference between Western and Eastern culture. The whole Eastern culture is based on how to stop sex life. And here in the Western countries, how to increase sex life. They are eating meat, eggs, drinking wine. These things will enthuse sex life. And as soon as you get very satisfactory sex life, you become enthused to work hard. Therefore, karmis, marriage is necessary because without sex, they cannot work. And for Gyanis, yogis, bhaktis, sex life is prohibited. Anyway, I just thought I would contribute that. Srila Prabhupada's word valuable. That's all I have.
Thank you.
That's all I have. I can fit into the time we have left. So, Hare Krishna, thank you again.
Thank you. I'm not sure I agree with your first assessment. Well, I'm pretty sure I don't agree. That because Prabhupada used certain words in the verse, such as increase of nuptial love. So he didn't describe it as being sidelong glances and handshakes. Nuptial love is a pretty specific word that implies like a honeymoon. So I think there's a sensual sense gratification imbued in it, and it was such that and Prabhupada says this is the direct translation, that he appeared lost in the feminine conduct, that he was basically like a hand-picked husband, that he was totally attached to his wife and swimming in the ocean of sense gratification. Whether it's he actually consummated this nuptial love or not, we don't know. It's not described here. But he behaved apparently like an ordinary man. But again, this was this is his business, and he was able to rule enthusiastically for a very long time, as he was assigned by his grandfather, Lord Brahma. So I don't know. We just have a different perspective. Like there was a famous Japanese movie from the 50s called Rashomon, directed by Akira Kurosawa, the most famous of Japanese film directors. And Rashomon was a story of a crime that took place, and there were 7 witnesses to the crime. One person happened somewhere in the forest, and one person was tending to getting wood, and the other person was walking by, and so 7 people saw the crime. So everybody tells their story, and there are 7 different versions that they don't line up. You can superimpose every opinion and they don't look the same at all. There were different opinions of a single event that happened. So what happened to Maharaj Priyavrata and his wife? I don't know. There's no big brother, putting cameras in people's bedrooms and seeing what took place. But again, and this came a few verses ago, that there was an extraordinary dispensation by the Supreme Lord himself. So it seems like he got away with what others couldn't get away with. And maybe it's my distorted mind that wants to see that, hey, there is someone who could indulge in sex life without getting caught. Maybe, but I don't know. I think the jury's out. We don't know. Well, now, unless you bring some scriptural reference, when I can't bring any, and I don't think anybody can bring any from another point of view, we can simply present our conjectures of what happened. But the result was that he did his duty perfectly and pretended to be a karmi. Lila Kishore, you want to contribute with something? We have only a couple of minutes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, yes, I do, from one Vaishnavi's opinion. And it's a very different view. And I think it's a good thing that there are men and women in the world because we need the balance. And what I got out of it was more two things. One, don't judge, because you can look at that relationship and so much talk about sex life. But what it said was that it appeared that way, but he was still a great soul. So I think, again, we should be very careful when we decide to call people karmis or say that somebody's indulging in this or that, because we don't know. And nuptial really just is relating to marriage or a marriage. And so nuptial love is love in a marriage situation. And anybody who's married can tell you that the only people who really know what's going on in a marriage are the people in that marriage. But what struck me in it was about the queen. And there's a saying, an English saying, that behind every great man, there's a good woman. And a lot of people take that she's slaving and doing whatever. And no, she's holding to the faith. She's maintaining the household in a way where he can be energized. She's dressing modestly and caring for herself in a pleasing way that pleases Krishna, not just her husband. And I think that it's important to remember those points, that is energizing. That when there are children, it's generally the mother. If this man is out ruling the world and chasing down miscreants, who's raising the children? So when that household is maintained in that way, when that woman is devoted to Krishna and is demonstrating that devotion, that's encouraging and that's energizing. And I think that we need to look at it that way also. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Your opinion is very much appreciated, even though it may not, again, we may not have the same opinion, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just simply a different perspective, and one of them may be more right than the other one. But regardless of that, we just follow Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu, and particularly Shastra, which Prabhupada said is the most important of the three. And so if there is any scriptural reference about the subtleties of nuptial love, then I'll be most interested in seeing it. All right, it's 8:00. Thank you very much to all of you for attending Bhagavatam class, and we'll see you tomorrow. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Hari 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 Bol.